Despite the fact that we aren't even alerted to its presence until our second playthrough of Silent Hill F. As it turns out, the Sacred Sword is one of the most important elements in the game, and in fact the events of the game cannot exist without it. Everything can be traced back to the Sacred Sword, and it has some surprising connections to real-life myths as well. So this week, let's dive into the truth behind the Sacred Sword, what it is, and why it's so important not just to Ebisugaoka in general, but Hinako's story as well. First, we need to understand the real-life stories that helped inspire the sword, and there are two in particular we're going to look at. First, the Nukemaru, a sacred sword passed down by the Taira clan, and the mythology behind Dainiten, a Buddhist deity also worshipped by the Taira. Yes, it all traces back to them once again. Now, according to legend, the Nukemaru was a sacred sword said to have been given to a poor hunter in Ise province, which is roughly modern-day Mie prefecture, by none other than Amaterasu herself. This sword was so powerful that no prey could escape it. But one day, the poor hunter placed his sacred sword at the base of a very large tree as he took a nap. When he woke up, he found that the giant tree was now withered and dead. Sound familiar already? At any rate, the sword was then given the name Kogarashi, which we can roughly translate as the wood witherer. Now, it's said that Taira no Taramori caught wind of this sword and decided to buy it. One day, while he was taking a nap, a giant serpent emerged from a nearby pond and attempted to attack him. However, the sacred sword unsheathed itself, ready to attack, and the giant serpent, understandably terrified by the sight of a sword drawing itself without help to mess up his day, withdrew back into the pond and sank all the way to the bottom. Sound familiar again? At any rate, the sword was then given a new name, Nukemaru, which we can roughly translate as the unsheathing sword. Setting that story aside for now, we also need to understand a little of Dainiten, a Buddhist deity who was worshipped by numerous members of the Taira clan in particular. Note that I'll be referring to this goddess and how she relates specifically to Japanese mythology, which differs somewhat to other areas around Asia. So, to take a very long and complex history and condense it into just the information we need to know here, Dainiten came to be closely associated with foxes, particularly white ones, and was often depicted riding one while carrying a sword. Dainiten was, at one point, so important that her mantra was chanted at the emperor's enthronement, and statues of a silver and gold fox were also said to be there. Taira no Kiyomori, the son of Tadamori, the guy with the Nukemaru, and the guy who would go on to basically start the Genpei War that would be the downfall of his clan, also reportedly had close ties to her, and was involved in rituals dedicated to her. But perhaps more importantly for Silent Hill F, at some point, Dainiten was also conflated with none other than Ukanobitama, who herself was also conflated with Inari. Basically, they were all confused for each other because of their close association with foxes. If you think trying to understand Silent Hill F is confusing, well, their real-life counterparts are no better. But one last important thing to know about Dainiten is that she was also said to possess the power to exorcise evil spirits. This is incredibly important for Silent Hill F, and let's look at why. First, the game tells us that when they lost the Genpei War, several members of the Taira clan fled to Higanokuni, or what would later become Ebisugaoka. The area had a history of being filled with poisonous gases, so it was the perfect place to hide because nobody would go near it. They brought with them the sacred sword of their defeated leader, and they buried it at the foot of a massive cedar tree in the mountains. As we later discover, That sword was incredibly powerful, however, and the animosity lingering within it continued to grow as it was buried beneath the tree. As such, the villagers erected a sacred barrier around it, using Jizo statues as anchors. These statues would work to harmonize the sword's animosity and keep its powers in check. However, we're also told that at some point, a young man discovered the sword, was possessed by it, and went on a massacre throughout the village. He was eventually stopped and the sword hidden again, but that deep animosity remained within it. Now, the game also tells us that the first Taira clan warriors who arrived in Higanokuni initially worshipped the water dragon, in the hopes that it would not murder them all horribly. They thought the giant tree protected the land, yes, but initially they worshipped the water dragon, which was a far more present problem. But one day, perhaps generations later, we're not told exactly when, a 3-meter tall monk appeared and told the villagers that they should, in fact, be worshipping the tree. It was the tree that was sapping the water dragon of its power, and as long as they worshipped the tree, it would keep the water dragon subdued until the end of time. Let's think back to the Nukemaru. A giant serpent in a pond tried to attack a member of the Taira clan as he slept. His sword protected him, sending the serpent cowering all the way back to the bottom of the water. In Ebisugaoka, members of the Taira clan buried their sacred sword at the bottom of a tree, then worshipped this giant serpent head in the water in the hopes that it wouldn't kill them. In time, this water dragon was indeed weakened, but now they're being told that it's because of the giant tree where their sacred sword is buried. Seems reasonable to assume that this is, perhaps, the work of said sword, right? Now, let's go back to Dainiten, an important deity to the Taira who has the power to exorcise evil spirits. We know that in actual history, Dainiten was often confused with Ukanomitama, the child of Susanoo no Mikoto, who was said to have slain the Yamata no Orochi, or the water dragon, originally. Dainiten, who is known to ride around on foxes and carry a sword. Again, it's not a huge leap to think that perhaps Dainiten, or rather Ukanomitama, came to Higanokuni with the fallen Taira warriors and the sacred sword of their fallen leader. And Dainiten, or Ukanomitama, or whatever we want to call this divine spirit with the power to exorcise evil spirits, then took up residence in the big tree instead, and started putting those powers to good use by exorcising that pesky water dragon that was killing everyone. With her close association to foxes, fox statues eventually went up around the area as well, something that would ironically contribute to her later downfall. But then, the giant cedar tree was struck by lightning and killed, leaving it dead and withered. Much like what happened when the Nukemaru was left at the roots of a tree by its original owner in the legend. And he woke to find the tree he was napping against also withered and dead. But in Ebisugaoka, this means Ukanomitama is now homeless, and the villagers are at a loss as to what to worship next. Remember, numerous generations have passed by this point. Pretty much nobody remembers the sacred sword, and because of their unique history, being fallen Taira warriors living in a hidden village, they also started to develop a unique tsukumo faith over time, putting deep importance and value on old objects. Things become a lot more important when you can't easily replace them, after all. And so, with their giant tree burnt down, they all agreed that they would have to switch their object of worship to the next oldest thing in the village, which they believed was a fox statue, friendship ended with giant cedar tree. Now, fox statue is my new best friend. Conveniently ignoring that the angry and powerful sword at the base of that tree is actually the next oldest thing in the village. I guess it's just going to be even angrier now, huh? While the game never outright states it, we're given more than enough clues to let us know that the sword and Ukanomitama, or as we later get to know her, the Tsukumo, are inextricably tied. In fact, it's likely that the power inhabiting the sword isn't just the animosity of the fallen tiger, but Dainiten / Ukanomitama / the divine being we know as the Tsukumo itself. Thus, when you cleanse the sword, you trigger the Tsukumo end boss. When you don't cleanse it, thus keeping the Tsukumo on your side, you fight the foxes instead. And with the fox clan sweeping in to take advantage of the villagers worshipping the fox statue, supplanting Ukanomitama, now homeless and stewing in her own rage while being attached to a sword no one remembers, well, their divine battle and hatred of each other really shouldn't be a surprise. It's just unfortunate for Hinako that she's the one who gets caught up in all of this long simmering history because of her unique blood type. And perhaps all of this could have been avoided if the villagers just remembered there was a powerful sword buried under that dead tree. But what did you guys think of this one? Are there any other topics from the game you'd like to see me cover? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.